Hi guys, it's JV. Um, so I'm just filming this today on my phone. I have no fancy backdrop or fancy looks or anything like that. Because what I want to talk about today is really serious. So basically, my mom came down with COVID and things have not really been going very well. In terms of her health, she's doing pretty good. She's experiencing some symptoms, but thankfully, they're not severe. You know, we've been very blessed that her prognosis is good, that she has a bad cough and stuff like that. Um, but what's worse than having COVID, if you can imagine something worse than having COVID, is that my mother was wrongfully evicted from her housing because she was sick. A couple weeks ago, at the end of September, she was experiencing a cough and some respiratory symptoms, and we thought it just might be allergies or like the change in the weather. And I suggested that she get a COVID test just in case. We really did not think she had COVID, but just to be safe, right? Well, she did end up testing positive for coronavirus. Um, and symptoms of COVID-19 did quickly start to manifest. So my mother, in the spirit of just doing the right thing, she told all of her housemates that she had tested positive. And the reaction from the people that she was living with, rather than making sure that she was going to get the rest and the recovery that she needed and making sure to just socially distance and really disinfect within the household, instead, my mother was met with a lot of opposition within the house, and the landlady, the woman who owns the house, which she's renting out to other people, my mom's a subletter in this situation. My mother was asked to vacate the premises, asked not to come into the home, even though she'd paid rent. She was asked to leave, and my mother, being the good person that she is, complied and had to stay in a motel for about 2 weeks while she was sick with COVID. She had to stay in a motel and without most of her possessions because they were still at the house, and also try to find new housing while she was trying to manage the symptoms of her illness. So basically what happened was, because neither of us are really working right now, both of us have lost our jobs because of the pandemic. We had to scrounge up the money for her to get the hotel, which essentially ended up eating like what would be normally a month of her rent. Basically spent her October rent on a 2-week stay in a motel. She saw doctors during that time as well. She spent money on that. She spent money on medicines, supplies that she would need at the motel, like water, vitamins, things like that, to just assist in her recovery. And there was no indication that she would be able to move back into the house. The landlord had texted her and said that she could not come back into the home unless she tested negative. Now, this is a problem because, as we know, you can test positive for coronavirus for potentially weeks and months, even after you've stopped exhibiting symptoms. So at that point, we knew it was just time for her to just try and find new housing. But that meant trying to come up with like the deposit for a new place, the first month of rent, and any costs associated with moving all of her things. We did the best we could and we found her a new place to live, but only after about spending a combined like $1,300 or more on everything involved in just trying to maintain her situation as everything around her fell apart. It's been really, really stressful on both of us. And thankfully, in terms of just the illness, in terms of just having COVID, I think she's out of the woods in terms of her symptoms, but it's just, she's in her 60s. Your worst fear is like, oh my gosh, what if my parents get sick, you know, like what would I do, you know? Um, and I had to make some of those decisions. Like I had to help her manage her illness as well as her housing situation. And I'm already hanging on by a thread, you guys. Like I already only had just enough money to get me through to like November or the end of November before things got really serious. So having to like help her cover her bases has now left me in a bad position. And she's also just barely scraping by, all because she was discriminated against for being sick. As you may know, millions of Americans have contracted the coronavirus since the earlier part of this year. My mom was among many of these people. Thankfully, the progression of her illness seems to be more on the mild side. Um, my heart goes out to anyone who's lost friends or family during this time as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. I don't know what I would do if something were to have happened to her, you know. Um, my mother and I, like many Americans, are just barely scraping by with what we can make. I mean, she had, prior to the pandemic, she had a job that only paid about $10 an hour, which unfortunately is normal in this country. And, you know, I was doing a little better off, but I live in New York City where everything is just that much more expensive. So I was also barely just scraping by. And then she lost her job in April because she worked at an airport. And I lost my job in June. And it's also worth mentioning that there's a moratorium on evictions, I believe, at this time. She's currently in the state of Texas. So now again the responsibility falls upon us to like see what the laws are about something like this. We might try to take this woman to court. We don't really know what the expense would be, and on top of that, when she tried to file with the local clerk and she explained her situation, they specifically asked her not to come in to file because she had COVID. They were like, you know, they asked her to call legal aid instead of just going in to the, I don't know what it is, the clerk's office and filing for like a civil case, you know. They gave her some hotline to call, which then put her in like a weird circle of like automated responses. And so, you know, we don't have a case against this woman yet. So, you know, I'm hoping soon that like she'll test negative and then we can like get her stuff back on track. But we're also trying to find housing for her, which is of course going to be difficult because she has COVID. Like no one's gonna want someone with COVID living, even if they aren't even if they're sort of out of the contagious period, which I think is about 10 or 14 days that you're actually contagious. It's actually been longer than that since she tested positive. So we believe that she's out of this, that phase of the illness, and slowly her symptoms are going to improve, I hope. It's been very challenging to find a new place for her to go in the middle of a pandemic, though we think we found a good spot, and we're gathering the funds to put the deposit down, and we hope that she can be in there for the month of November, if not sooner. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I'll cut over to her. She's sent me some video for you guys, just to introduce herself and talk about her situation.
Hello, this is Eva Church. I recently got COVID. I ended up telling my landlord, and I had to be honest and truthful with her. And when I did, she ended up kicking me out of the house. I was treated unfairly. I was discriminated against. I kept telling her that she doesn't really have the right to do this, and she did it anyway. And so I ended up not living in the house. I'm in temporary housing. I appreciate everyone listening to my story. I know this is unusual times, and I am asking for assistance. I know a little can go a long way, and I appreciate the help that you can give. Thank you very much, and you have a good day.
So as you can see, this has been really stressful for the both of us, and we were hoping to recoup some of the money that we had to spend on the insanity that has been her situation with her being like evicted for just having COVID, having to find new housing, having to take care of her medical expenses, motel expenses, money that I've spent on trying to help her, and all that stuff. So my goal would be to raise around $1,500. That would really, really help us at this time. It would just kind of get us back to baseline, you know? It wouldn't really take us that much further into the future, but we could at least kind of go back, so kind of back to normal, you know? Trying to get by month to month, you know? Because as you know, like our government isn't really helping us as much as they could be. Um, we're each getting only about $800 a month from unemployment, and that doesn't even pay my rent. She has to use over half of that just for her rent and bills, like a car insurance, all the normal stuff. You know, like $800 a month really does not go very far. Neither of us have anything left over. And I do want to emphasize that, you know, she had been constantly wearing a mask. She had been social distancing. She did everything in her power to keep from getting sick, and still she got sick. It can happen to anyone at any time, and that's really the scary reality of it, is that no matter how much, no matter how prepared you think you are, um, or how well you're adhering to guidelines, it's any it can happen to anyone. And unfortunately, it happened to her and had really unforeseen consequences. So, um, I know it's a difficult time for everyone right now. I know, I mean, hardly any of my friends are working. I know so many people who've lost housing. I know people who've lost friends, who've lost family. You know, I know that this is a very, very, very trying time. And I truly wish I was setting up a GoFundMe under better circumstances. I, you know, I wish I was doing a GoFundMe for something more like my art or music or something. You know, I was actually in a production cycle at the time, you know, because with the additional free time that I have from being unemployed, I've been trying to work on some new stuff for you guys. Thankfully, I did enough groundwork before all this happened. I'm going to release a new single at the end of this month. Right before Halloween, so please keep an eye out for that. I hope you'll be pleasantly surprised. I hope you guys love it. I'm very, very proud of the work that I've done on this track. I just simply wasn't prepared for my mother to get sick. You know, it sucks. It sucks. I had to put all of that on pause to take care of my mother, and all of my available funds that well, would normally have reserved for like creative services and things like that to like push new music out, um, all went to her, and then I have nothing left over. So, so I hope I can get back to my projects soon. But in the meantime, all I'm really asking is for maybe like $10 from 150 people. Even if we get our goal only met halfway or a third of the way, we'll still be so much better off than just having nothing. My mother's a wonderful woman. She's just doing her best to keep the bills paid, keep the rent paid, you know. And I did actually get a work opportunity, just a small freelance project just the other day. So I'm very thankful for that. But you know, being a freelance artist, I do graphic design. That's my bread and butter. It's just you never know when the projects are going to come up, and I keep looking and applying. And I was working for an agency full time before, but they had to scale back and make cuts. I mean, 2020, you know, so now I'm on unemployment just like everybody else. And me not being able to do anything because I'm physically not there, you know. Even financially, I was not really in a place to help that much. And that's not to say we haven't had trouble sometimes before. We have, but we've always been able to get through it, you know? But this time, just with everything else going on, it's like it's just unmanageable. This is just a completely unmanageable situation for us. She can't seem to find work that pays more than $10 or $12 an hour, and she's always been a single mom. So, she doesn't really have any family near her or close friends that she can rely on. She pretty much just only has me, and I live very far away. Because I, moved to New York to just try and make a better life for myself. And I think I've done pretty well, all things considered, but it's been a bumpy road. And like through all that, the person who's there for me the most is my mother. I'm also supporting her through financial collapse, you know? Um, so yeah, things have not been easy, and rent just continues to rise. We're having trouble just finding her a room for like $500 anywhere in Houston. I mean, there's places I've done my research. We found some good options that we're looking at, but it's increasingly difficult to find an apartment for her in her budget, which to me is crazy because 10 years ago in Houston, you could definitely find something like that for sure. And there's just none. There's just hardly anything left anymore. So the housing that's available to her is few and far between, and we're just combing through everything to find a suitable place for her. We were actually so fortunate to find the housing for her that we had found, because it was close to her job near the airport. And I'm sort of trying to look at the silver lining of this a little bit. Like maybe it's a good thing that we sort of have to find her a new place to stay in this really roundabout way, because we only chose that particular housing offer because it was located close to her job and she didn't have a car at the time. So we've resolved her car issue, and she has been actively looking for work in different parts of town. So we are looking for housing for her in like various parts of town. I think it would be better for her to live closer to the center of town if possible, rather than way out near the airport where there's less opportunities, unless she just wants to go back and work at the airport again. But that's not possible right now. So we are really hopeful for the future that, both of us will get back on our feet soon, that both of us will find jobs that support our lives. And we've been trying really hard. And I know it's been hard for a lot of people. I humbly implore you, even a little bit goes a long way. $1, $5, anything like that. If we could make it at least $1,000 or $700, we'd be a little better off at least. What happened to her was unfair. It was unfortunate. Instead of being able to just focus on recovering from COVID, she was sent on a wild goose chase looking for housing and trying to like get her stuff out of this woman's house, and who didn't even want her to go inside. My mom was actually afraid she was going to get locked out. She thought that woman would change the locks. I mean, we couldn't predict what was going to happen next. So it was just like day after day after day, it was just like things just kept sort of collapsing, and we just didn't know what was going on. And the whole time my mother held on to hope that this woman would have a change of heart, and not once did the person or people that she lives with inquire as to the state of her health. None of them asked if she was okay. None of them asked if she was feeling bad from one day to the next day. They simply wanted nothing to do with her. They just wanted her gone. And I find this very saddening, because according to people that I've talked to, there's a lot of people in Texas who don't seem to believe that this pandemic is serious. But then on the other hand, once someone catches it, which can happen to anyone, you're like a pariah. Nobody wants to do anything for you or with you or to help you. I mean, it's like, is it a big deal or not? Is it real or not? Like, just pick one, you know? Um, like, and it is a big deal. It is real. And my heart goes out to anyone who's been similarly affected by the coronavirus. um, I just hope we can all get back to a normal life soon. And if you find it in your heart to assist us in that, I would be so, so eternally grateful. I was hesitant to even make this video because it's so hard to put the real stuff out there like this. Um, it was not an easy decision. I sort of feel it in my heart that you only get one good like crowdsourcing opportunity, and I was always hoping to just like save that for when I was ready to do my album or like whatever, you know. I wish this were under better circumstances, but I hope I've chosen the right decision by putting this out there and putting us in kind of a vulnerable place. And again, even anything small that you could manage would be greatly appreciated. So this is obviously different than normal content that I would post on, you may be seeing this on YouTube or Instagram. Please don't hold it against me if I choose to archive this video at a later time, because I really just want to get beyond this awful chapter of my life. I really just want 2020 to be over. So, I hope you can understand that if I do choose to do that once the campaign is over. But I will give you guys updates when and if I can. My mom's continuing to get tested as the doctor sees fit. We're just hoping for the best. So if you are curious about me or my music, you can find me on Instagram at jhvhmusic, or on YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. That's jhvh music. But you can call me JV. And if you do end up donating, I would love for you to just comment or send a message, just reach out so that I can properly thank everyone. I think that pretty much sums it up. Thank you so much.